From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer, the man with the worst posture in all the world. We are here to talk about the Ravens' upcoming game against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. We're going to talk about a surprising no-show at Ravens practice yesterday. We'll talk about some improvements from some Ravens rookies. All that and much, much more. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsors.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, if you're tuning in on Facebook, X, or YouTube, you can see Jonas slouching back in his chair, but it's not because, Jonas, you have bad posture, as I just asserted. It's because there are no room for your feet underneath this table. You're a long, lengthy man.
Imagine me trying to fit into an airplane, Paul.
God, that's got to suck. The airplane cabins have gotten smaller and smaller, it appears. Or at least our seat rooms have gotten smaller and smaller. Have you noticed? Or are we growing?
I don't think we're growing because we're fully grown adult men. The weird thing is, like...
And you can quote me on that.
I sometimes like the close quarters because usually when I'm on a plane, I'm trying to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so I will just fall forward and put my head against the seat in front of me.
I'm definitely a forward sleeper, too.
But one time I got nicely put into an exit row seat.
Perfect.
And I wanted to sleep, and I miscalculated my thinking there because I couldn't actually lean forward because of how much legroom I had. So it was just a miserable but very comfortable 2 hours.
Your legs felt great. Your head, not so much.
No.
The worst is when you were leaning forward, though, and the person in front of you decides to send their seat back.
Yeah.
Are you of the opinion that nobody on flights should move their seat back at all?
We're going to do this, huh? We're going to do the...
a controversial take here.
Do what you want. You paid for the ticket. I'm not going to make this Jerry Seinfeld bit.
The thing is, we are... My beef is not with the person in front of me. It's with the system as a whole that has created this situation to which I am inhibited by somebody moving their chair
Slightly.
back. Yes. Well, it's a little annoying if you're like falling asleep and then they're like janking their chair back and forth.
Why would they be janking their chair back?
I don't know, but they do. You've never had this situation. You're flying to Cleveland on Sunday
or Saturday.
Which day are you flying out?
I think Saturday.
That's right, people. If you fly through, are you flying through BWI? No, through DC. You could be on a flight with Jonas Shaffer, and if you see his beautiful red hair, please tell him you love the podcast. Please tell us you like the podcast. Through Apple Podcasts, if you write us a 5-star review, I'll read it out here on the show. Like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. All right, Jonas, let's talk about the news from yesterday's practice in Owings Mills. And that was the surprising no-show of one Lamar Jackson. Missed practice with knee soreness. John Harbaugh said afterwards that he should be okay and that he's looking forward to practicing today, as in Thursday. So we'll see in a few hours if he's out there as well. It's just a little bit shaky. It's a little bit concerning. You can feel everybody tensing up and tightening up in the Ravens community because it just goes to show how, I don't know, tenuous this whole thing is, how important all these games are down the stretch. The Ravens are 4-5. They need to win as many games as possible. And yes, this is a soft second half of the schedule, but they got to win. And we saw what this team looks like without Lamar Jackson, and it's not particularly good aside from one game with Tyler Huntley. So anytime Lamar Jackson is missing from practice, everybody gets a little on edge.
And it's not just the missing practice element of it that is unsettling. It's just the fact that he's not talking. Like, if he's going to be fine, then you can still throw him up there at the podium for his usual press conference. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about the communication issues that have persisted between Lamar and the Ravens when he's going through injuries that may or may not be super serious. And it's just frustrating for us, and I'm sure frustrating for fans when you see Joe Burrow, who's 2 or 3 weeks away from even being able to play in a game, and he's talking to reporters in Cincinnati and talking about his own expectations and his own timeline. And here's Lamar supposedly okay, and we probably won't even talk to him until tomorrow. And that has just been, the bugaboo in all this. So hopefully when we get out there in a couple hours, we will see him at practice. Hopefully he's moving fine. Obviously he, got hit a couple times against Minnesota, but it looked like that biggest hit that he took, the body slam, was upper body and not lower body. So it was a little strange that he is dealing with the knee soreness. But, as he gets older, as he accumulates this wear and tear, this is going to be, I think, just something that we're going to have to deal with. Just the idea that he is perennially a risk for appearing on that injury report because of his play style, and it's not anywhere near as bad as what Jackson Dart puts himself through with just kind of going kamikaze mode. But Lamar tries stuff. Lamar's gotten hit. Lamar's going to continue to get hit, and it's just going to be kind of a you don't want to say weekly feature, but it's at least a weekly risk for us to be talking about where he is injury-wise.
There are a couple guys on that Giants team that kind of throw themselves like battering rams at defensive players. A couple other no-shows at Ravens practice. Marlon Humphrey will miss Sunday's game. John Harbaugh said he underwent finger pin surgery, which is a surgical procedure used to stabilize and fix fractures in the fingers. Harbaugh had said after the game against the Vikings that despite the fact that Marlon Humphrey played very well, had an interception down the field against J.J. McCarthy, that he was dealing with a finger injury and that he was at that point contemplating surgery, is going to have that surgery. Hopefully it is only one game that he misses. That just means it's going to be a lot more Chidobe Awuzie, I think, on Sunday, Jonas.
And it's fine because this is, as we'll get into, this is one of the worst receiving cores in the NFL. Like,
name the position group. It's one of the worst in the NFL.
Yeah, just on offense, especially for Cleveland. I guess you can have a little bit of hope there with the tight ends there, and obviously Quinton Judkins is a really nice young rookie running back. But this whole passing game is just doomed to fail.
Yeah, and then one other
famous last words.
Yeah, exactly. And then one other no-show at practice is Rashad Bateman, who suffered a high ankle sprain. Harbaugh said it was an ankle sprain. It was reported as a high ankle sprain by members of the national media on that touchdown catch against Minnesota. Sparks the whole question of, was it a hip drop tackle? If it was a hip drop tackle, wasn't it flagged? It's a weekly conundrum that Harbaugh doesn't have any answers for. We don't have any answers for. I don't know if it should be legislated out, but the NFL doesn't seem to know what a hip drop tackle is or if they really want to ban it.
Yeah, I mean, we spent how many times, how many hours talking about hip drop tackles. The NFL
with Mark Andrews
collective
2 years ago,
right? Spent so much time talking about how to legislate this out of the game. Before the 2024 season, and I think we've had 3 total hip drop flags thrown over these past 2 seasons. So it's obviously a very, very tough thing to legislate. That there was a play where it looked like Marlon Humphrey was dragging someone. I think on that first drive, he's near the sideline. I think tackling Justin Jefferson. It looks like he has the kind of pivot, the swivel that is distinctive of a hip drop, and it wasn't flagged for him, and maybe it should have been. I don't know. Maybe we'll see him get a fine as well as the Vikings DB who tackled Rashad Bateman. But it's obviously a dangerous thing. But I think it's just instinctive for a lot of these guys to just hop on these receivers' backs and do whatever they can to drag them down to the ground. And sometimes it's illegal, and sometimes it's not, and it looks like it is. And unfortunately for Rashad, it's probably going to cost him a game or 2.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's preview this game against the Cleveland Browns. Ravens 4-5, Browns 2-7. Ravens are favored by 9.5 points, despite the fact that they're on the road. Their playoff odds, according to the New York Times playoff simulator, their odds of winning the AFC North go up to about 79% with a win. And honestly, they're not hurt that much by a loss either. Just 63% chance of winning the division, even if they lose. They should still win this game and get to 5-5, however. But the Ravens should be rooting for the Bengals this weekend against the Steelers. Why is that, Jonas?
Just because, obviously, even with Joe Burrow back, I think there is this hope in Cincinnati that maybe they can turn around the offense. They don't really turn around the offense, but you get enough boost of this offense, maybe the defense starts to turn things around, and you get a 3-horse race instead of just a 2-horse race in this AFC North. The Bengals are 3-6, so if they win this weekend, they beat the Steelers, and the Ravens lose, then you're talking about the Ravens and Bengals being on equal footing somehow in that AFC North, with Joe Burrow potentially coming back in a couple of weeks' time. But you look at just what Cincinnati would have to do to actually make this a competitive race in the AFC North. I mean, it's a pretty brutal schedule for them. I mean, they've got just a 2% chance of making the playoffs, and their next 5 games: Steelers, Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens. So if you're saying that they can knock off the Steelers and then just let regression do its thing and probably take a couple more losses there, and before long they're at 8 or 9 losses for the year, then it really won't matter too much if they have Joe Burrow back. And just because of how competitive the wild card race will be, I mean, I think it's probably likely that the only team coming out of the AFC North in the playoffs is going to be the champion. I don't think we're going to see, barring a couple late season runs, a wild card team coming out of this division. So if the Bengals can, lift some hopes by knocking off the Steelers and just further making it easier for the Ravens to separate themselves from Pittsburgh by the time that they get to that Week 18 finale, then the Ravens will have owed Cincinnati a nice little beer.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot more teams that are not going to win their division in the AFC that are going to compete for those playoff spots. The issue has not been Joe Burrow not being healthy for Cincinnati. It's been the terrible, terrible defense. So even getting Joe Burrow back will not exactly turn around their fortunes, I don't think. This is, of course, the second meeting between the Ravens and the Browns this season. Ravens won 41-17 back in week 2. That was a long time ago. That was before Lamar Jackson's injury. That was back when Joe Flacco was starting for the other AFC North team. He's now in Cincinnati. He started that game for Cleveland. It was a 10-3 game at halftime, 20-10 game entering the fourth quarter. There were some smattering of boos as the Ravens were, yes, leading the game, but not playing up to their potential in week 2 after coming off a very disappointing week 1 loss. And then the Ravens scored 3 fourth quarter touchdowns. Devontae Walker had a touchdown, might be active on Sunday with Rashad Bateman being out. Tavius Robinson had that strip sack that turned into a Roquan Smith scoop and score for 63 yards. And DeAndre Hopkins had his first touchdown as a Raven, and the Ravens go out and blow them out, to the point where Dylan Gabriel came into the game at the very end. I had forgotten this, Jonas, and had 3 completed passes. That was the first time that we saw Dylan Gabriel in a game, and then now, well, he's starting this game on Sunday. Lamar was not at his best in that game, at least in the first half, and then he really turned it on in the second half. We'll talk about the rushing attack that struggled in that game as well. But Jonas, last year, I titled a podcast before the Ravens' first game against the Browns are an abject disaster. And then they went out and beat the Ravens. The Ravens were 8.5-point road favorites last year going into that game where Jameis Winston was starting at quarterback. The Browns might be even more of an abject disaster at this point than they were at that point last year. But you just have to worry about the Browns because the Ravens have not swept them in a season series since 2020. It has been 5 years since the Ravens have been able to win both regular season matchups against the Browns, despite the fact that the Browns during that stretch are 29-39. Why can't the Ravens sweep the Browns?
I will, just looking at some of these recent games, obviously the theme in at least 2 of them is one that is possibly resonant in this one, which is just, is Lamar going to be healthy? Because 2021, it's Tyler Huntley out there. 2022, late season again, Tyler Huntley out there. It's been a struggle that they've lost dumb games to the Browns. It looked like the Ravens might lose a dumb game to them in week 2 because their offense really could do nothing. Their run game could do nothing. And, it's just AFC North football. It's just, the kind of classic throw out the record books type of game. You see it in college football where 2 rivals get together and, Iowa might be a 23-point favorite over Iowa State, but you look at there in the fourth quarter and it's 17-14. And it just always seems to play out in a way that is, not what the odds makers expect or not what the fans of the favorite team might expect. And, there's plenty of talent on this Cleveland team, more so on the defensive side of the ball than on the offensive side of the ball. But it's just, it's definitely a worrisome spot for the Ravens because they've been making so much progress. They're in such a good place right now with everything kind of clicking on defense and the offense finding ways to get past some of its unevenness. And if they go to Cleveland expecting, just kind of another walk in the park, then they're going to look up in the fourth quarter and they're going to be down like 13-10, and it's just going to be kind of white knuckle mode. And that I think you always have to expect that when you have these divisional games.
Yeah, I think the Ravens have to just be careful to avoid the quote unquote trap game, but I don't know if this technically qualifies as a trap game. When I think of trap games, I think of games against cupcake opponents right before games against good teams, important matchups.
The look ahead spot.
Yeah. So you're looking ahead to 2 weeks from now. The Ravens, if they're looking 2 weeks ahead from now, they're looking at the New York Jets, who just beat the Cleveland Browns, but are just as bad as the Browns. So it's not like the Ravens are going to be looking 3 weeks ahead for this game. They just have to take care of business. And you said it after the Vikings game, and I completely agree. If I'm watching the Ravens, rooting for them to make the playoffs, I frankly don't care how ugly these games are. I frankly don't care how bad they look. Just win the games.
Right.
Like you don't have to win pretty. You don't have to run up the score. It doesn't have to be another 41-17 game. If this is a 3-point victory, you can just say, you know what? We're 5-5. We have another chance to get to 6-5 with a win against the Jets. Just win these games and put yourself in playoff position.
If you're rooting for, if you're rooting for a DVOA champion, then just adopt the Seahawks as your NFC team.
Yeah.
The Ravens are not going to be, I think, a top 5 team in all the fancy metrics by year's end. They might be, maybe they just catch fire. I think they're pretty close to the top 10 right now, but we know the limitations on this team. And I asked Roquan whether the memories from last year served as any kind of lesson for the game in Cleveland this year, because obviously, I think most people, if not everyone who's picking games, probably picked the Ravens to win that game because it was Jameis, because the team was rolling. It was a bit of a weird situation because there were some injuries. You had the just disaster at safety position with Eddie Jackson and Marcus Williams. I forget if that was a game where Marcus Williams just sat.
I think that was the game where Williams sat and Eddie Jackson played like 69 snaps or something.
And Nate Wiggins was out of that game. I think he was, I believe, ill, so he couldn't go in that one. And the Ravens just they couldn't stop Cedric Tillman. I think they had some trouble on the ground early. I think that they lost some of their interior guys to minor injuries, and they were within punching. They were within touching range for most of that game, but it was just a situation where the pass rush got home. Lamar made some bad throws. The run game couldn't get going, and there were just plays to be made that the Ravens couldn't make. Like, we were talking before the show, the kind of deep shot to Rashad Bateman that he just seemed to lose in the sun. That would have been a nice first down on third down. And I think they ended up punting because he dropped that ball. So weird things happen. The Ravens have done a good job of just, doing the small things, taking care of special teams. I know they had some drops against Minnesota, but obviously they won the more important statistical category of turnovers. And you just have to be the smarter team, be the more secure team, not cost yourself possessions with dumb fumbles or deflections or whatever. And Roquan just said, we don't have to worry about last year because we already saw earlier this year just how quickly things can spiral out of control, he said. I think the way we started the season offered the biggest lesson of all. I'm not worried about last year because it's a completely new team. Yeah,
and I think that was also the game where Kyle Hamilton had a chance to seal it with an interception on that last Browns possession, and he ends up dropping it, and then the Browns score a touchdown
later. Yeah, cover 0 over the top.
Yep. And it was an ugly one there. But in terms of DVOA, I mean, what was it, 2023, where the Ravens had the best offense and defense DVOA or near the top of the league?
Yep.
So it's a great metric, and it tells you a lot, but you're not trying to win the metric game. You're just trying to win football games. Let's talk about some of the defensive players, particularly in this rookie class, because Jonas, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about how it's been, you look at the results from the 2024 Ravens draft class, and it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, you have a good starter in the first round in Nate Wiggins. You have a starter at right tackle in Roger Rosengarten. Beyond that, you have the injured Adisa Isaac. You have TJ Tampa, who's playing a smattering of defensive snaps and a lot of special team snaps. And then you don't have a whole lot after that. In terms of the 2025 rookie class, the first 5 weeks of the season were not great. Malachi Starks was not playing very well. Teddy Buchanan was being thrust into a role he was clearly not ready for. Mike Green, the same situation. Emory Jones was still recovering from his injury. The results were not good. But now we sit here at week 11. Things are looking up, particularly for the guys at the top of the class. Their first 2 picks, Malachi Starks, I said when he got drafted, he might be a floor raiser for this defense. And their second round pick, Mike Green, might be a ceiling raiser for this defense. Have you seen that play out so far over the last few weeks, Jonas?
Yeah. I mean, I think just this is a game where, you look at what Cleveland has and that ballyhoo draft class, and I don't think the Ravens draft class is anywhere nearly as impactful as what Cleveland got. But if you can get anywhere close, then, like you said, you lift the ceiling of this team, you lift the floor of this team. Mason Graham having a solid season as their first round pick. Carson Schlesinger has obviously been a rookie year sensation as an off-ball linebacker. Quinshon Judkins looks good. Harold Fannin, their tight end from Bowling Green, already leads Cleveland in, I think, catches and receiving yards. Obviously Dylan Gabriel, probably not the long-term answer at quarterback, but at least he's been, good enough to start there. And then we'll see if we see Shedeur Sanders on Sunday. It would be awfully hilarious given what we know about how close the Ravens.
I'm rooting for it so hard.
Came to picking them, but as we've talked about a million times, and we'll continue to talk about, the Daniel Jeremiah benchmark for a good draft class is, do you find 3 starters? And the Ravens, it seems like, have found 3 starters all on defense. Malachi Starks coming on, Mike Green coming on, Teddy Buchanan. We'll see just how far along Emory Jones can contribute. And then you just look at the guys on day 3. Carson Vincent has already surpassed Joe Noteboom as that swing tackle. LeJontay Wester is, of course, contributing on special teams. Maybe he gets more of a role in offense this week with Rashad Bateman out. But it's just encouraging that after what was a just nightmarish first month and a half or so, guys are starting to find their fit, find their vibe a little bit. And Malachi Starks, look at the PFF grades, not the end all be all, but just directionally accurate. First 5 weeks, ranked 55th of 67 safeties playing at least half of their team's defensive snaps. Last 5 weeks, 5th of 62. He's obviously got consecutive games now with an interception. He's tackling better than he was early in the year. Mike Green, still not ranking very highly in the PFF grades, but we've seen him make some impactful plays as a run defender, as a pass rusher. Sacks in 2 of the past 3 games for him. He had a couple nice reps against a very talented left tackle there for Minnesota and Christian Darrisaw. Teddy Buchanan, not a lot of the kind of brain farts that we saw from earlier in the year. It seems like that partnership with Roquan has really settled in. He's gone from a bottom 11, bottom 12 linebacker, off-ball linebacker, to a kind of middle of the pack, which for a rookie, as we've seen with Patrick Queen, with Trenton Simpson, is pretty good. And then you see, Todd Monken talking last week about just how he thinks Emory Jones could be a contributor this season. He says he's a Raven. You can see that he fits here. So whether that means he's just going to be kind of in the mix for reserve snaps if someone goes down, or whether he might actually rise up and challenge Afalele or Voorhees for a starting job is still up for grabs. We still have a ways to go in the season, but it hasn't taken very long for just the vibe and the outside perception of this draft class to have changed, almost done a complete 180.
Yeah, I mean, maybe shame on us for jumping to conclusions, but the results were bad. I mean, the results were legitimately bad, and I think that we added the caveats that it's very early, and we've seen star players. Kyle Hamilton, the prime example of a guy who struggled mightily in the first several weeks of his NFL career, and the injuries to the defense in the first several weeks necessitated all of these guys playing outsized roles, playing roles that they were not prepared for. And it seems like now they are settling in to their role. So good on them for that. Let's talk about, let's start with this Ravens defense against the Browns offense, because we're right there anyway. Let's talk about Dylan Gabriel. Let's talk about the fact that he has a great touchdown to interception ratio, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Everything else is not great. Under 60% completion, averaging just 124 passing yards per game. Jonas, what do you see from the left-handed Dylan Gabriel at quarterback?
I think probably the most damning thing about him is just the arm strength. Throws of 10 or more yards downfield, which is not that far downfield. He's completed a league low 36.2% of his passes. On throws 20 or more yards downfield, he's completed 20%. He's 2 for 10 on deep shots. So,
yeesh, 2 for 10.
When you can't throw the ball pass the sticks reliably, it really just does a number on your passing attack. And you put all that together with just a very underwhelming passing core and a very sieve-like offensive line. It's understandable why this Browns offense is the way it is. I mean, since week 5, when he took over, they're 28th in EPA per play. They are dead last and far away from the second last in success rate. They're last in dropback success rate. They're tied for last in rushing success rate. So it's really, as good as this Browns defense is, as hard of a road this Ravens offense might have to hoe, on Sunday. It's just, the Ravens can have a C- game on defense and still probably not give up more than 17 points against this Browns offense, because it's just, where do you turn if you want to have any kind of reliable pattern for success?
Yeah, and I think an encouraging sign for the Ravens defense too. There have been a lot of more encouraging signs that we've seen since Alohi Gilman came, and they've been able to fix a lot of their problems. But remember how uncharacteristically bad they were against the run for a lot of those early games? And they seems to have tightened up a lot in that area. And they'll need to be good because Quinshon Judkins, the rookie running back, has been very good so far this season. He's averaging, he's got 561 rushing yards, under 140 carries, so 5 touchdowns, and he's been terrific. They will need to be tight in the run game in that area. And really, the only pass threat that you can say other than Njoku is Jerry Jeudy, who is still a solid wide receiver, but I would imagine Nate Wiggins is going to be asking Chuck Pagano if he can shadow Jerry Jeudy this week.
He might see Jerry Jeudy as below him.
The confidence of Nate Wiggins is astounding.
Yeah. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, like a decent route runner. I think probably he got himself a very nice contract for that, like late season year that he had with Jameis Winston there. But you look at some of the ESPN tracking metrics, he's got the worst hands in the NFL. I think his drop rate this year has just been dreadful. Like his catch rate alone is well below 50%. And just, this is not a good receiver room in general. There are 103 qualifying receivers on those ESPN receiver tracking metrics. Harold Fannin is the highest ranked at 89th. David Njoku is 96th. And then Isaiah Bond and Jerry Jeudy are both tied for last. Now, obviously, that discounts Cedric Tillman, who's missed some time this year with a hamstring injury, back now. But again, he has not really had the kind of season that I think some people in the fantasy community predicted for him as being that, explosive vertical receiver. So it's just, how do you get explosives with everything that we think about this Browns offense? The offensive line allows a pressure rate over 40%. The longest completion by a Browns player this year is 35 yards. I think we're confident.
That's crazy.
In the Ravens defense being better against the run, although, Quinshon Judkins does have home run potential. So just kind of watch out there if they're able to pick off the Ravens at certain spots. But it's just, it's like I said, it's really hard for me to imagine this Browns team being a unit that can move, mow the Ravens down drive after drive, even playing at home.
Yeah, I think our Who's Got It Better Than award should go to Roquan Smith this week, because I think he played his best game of the season so far in week 2 against the Browns when he had that 63-yard score. But he played a good game overall in that game, and obviously had his season temporarily derailed by injury. But since he's been back, Jonas, it seems like a lot of hype is building back around Roquan Smith being quote unquote back. Do you see it as him being back?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just, like, one play that stands out was the screenplay. There's, I think, maybe in the second quarter Sunday against Minnesota, and it's a nice call. I think the Vikings caught the Ravens in a blitz or just some disadvantageous play call, and there was Roquan like beating 3 offensive linemen to the spot to force Aaron Jones out after like a 5 or 6 yard gain. So like, that doesn't look like a guy who is struggling to move around out there. And obviously that was the big ding against him. Just, does this guy approaching 30 still have the wheels to be this elite sideline to sideline linebacker? Like, we still think very highly of him as a run defender. We still think highly of his ability to process. But you need to be able to be this guy who can fly around the field. And he looked like that. And it's going to be interesting to see just, I guess, like, how he hangs up once the Ravens get past this really rough stretch of quarterbacks, because there are a lot better quarterbacks down the road, starting with Joe Burrow, maybe Jordan Love, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's been a very, very accommodating stretch for him and this Ravens defense in general, just to look good, because they have not played a good quarterback in a long, long while.
And Roquan Smith's staying good, staying athletic, staying fast is such an important part of this defense, not only because of the money that they've committed to him for the next 2.5 years, but because of how much they pin on him as the play caller, as the guy in the middle of that defense. I mean, it has been, unfortunately, since Patrick Queen left, it has been a rotating cast of characters next to him at linebacker, because they feel that good about Roquan Smith being able to cover up any mistakes. And the fact that he's been playing a lot better has been a massive, massive boon for this defense. All right, other side of the ball. Obviously, our number one concern is the health of Lamar Jackson. You just hope that he's able to suit up for this game. But when you look at what didn't work well in week 2 against the Browns, and it sounds ridiculous now to look back and say, well, they didn't play a particularly good game, because they did score 41 points. 7 of those came from the defense, but they ended up turning it on late. But the running game was particularly not good in that game. 21 carries as a team for 45 yards. Derrick Henry had 11 carries for just 23 yards in that game. Justice Hill, 3 carries for 7 yards. Keaton Mitchell, inactive, as we know. He will hopefully be active for this game. What was going wrong for that rushing attack for the Ravens?
Just everything. They couldn't keep guys out of the backfield. I mean, the wildest stat from that game is Derrick Henry had 23 yards total, but he had 29 yards after contact. Like, that is just
it's getting hit way too much.
Hard to wrap your mind around. He was hit at the line of scrimmage or before it on 8 of his 11 carries. Just another, kind of set the tone for what this Ravens run game could feel like at times this year. And so, it's the typical Browns defense where it's kind of spreading you out, a lot of wide 9 formations where your defensive ends are pretty far back from the tackles. They're going to leave gaps for you to hit, and they're trusting on those linebackers to fill those gaps. So if you can get them to either be over aggressive on play action, or just over aggressive and hit them with counters or trap plays or stuff like that. We saw the Ravens try to do that early in that game. It just did not work. And that put the Ravens in bad down and distance spots with Todd Monken calling the plays there. So, it is a gettable run defense just based on the structure, but there's so much talent up front. I mean, just so much more talent than the Ravens have, honestly, on offense. Just Myles Garrett remains a freak of nature out there. Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright have both done a good job on the opposite side of that defensive line. Mason Graham been solid. Malik Collins has been a beast of an offseason signing. All guys who can get to the quarterback pretty quick. Browns are 3rd in the NFL in sack rate, 7th in pressure rate. So it's not just the run game that was frustrating for the Ravens, but it was the drop back passing game as well. Just Lamar didn't have a lot of time to kind of go through his reads. And even if this Browns secondary, the quarterback room, Denzel Ward isn't having the great season, but the safeties are highly graded. And if the Ravens are without Rashad Bateman, which we think they will be, then that's going to put even more pressure on a D-Hop or Tez Walker or the tight ends to step up and be the kind of escape hatch for Lamar.
Yeah. Expect a lot of blitzes, I think, is something to keep an eye on here. We spent a lot of last week talking about how Brian Flores would scheme up blitzes to get into Lamar Jackson's face, and assuming it is Lamar Jackson at quarterback, I think that we're going to see these similar things from Jim Schwartz and this Cleveland defense. Another thing we should talk about before we get into our predictions, Jonas, special teams. The Browns had a horrendous special teams week last week. They allowed a punt return touchdown and a kickoff return touchdown. 32nd in special teams DVOA. Horrendous.
Yeah.
Awful.
This has been probably the weirdest, statistical split for this Browns team. Is why are they so bad despite having a top 5 defense in the NFL? Is because they are 32nd in DVOA in offense, and they're 32nd in DVOA on special teams. It's just a bad spot. We saw just how terrible they were against the Jets. We haven't even talked about the fact that they held the Jets to 175 yards of total offense, and they were still manhandled in that game last weekend. So
they had no business losing that game.
No.
And yet they did.
Yeah, they did.
All right. We are going to give you our predictions on the other side of another quick break.
For the fifth year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, do you have a score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I think I'm going 20-13 Ravens.
Wow, low scoring.
Backdoor cover by the Browns. I think it's probably a game that the Ravens have, control of, even if they don't look great on offense all game long. I'm a little bit wary of Lamar, with the knee soreness being what it is. He's gotten the ball out quicker since he came back from injury. The interesting next gen stats statistical tidbit was he's increased his quick pass rate, which is 2.5 seconds or less, from 43.2% of his attempts from weeks 1 to 4, which obviously was the period before that hamstring injury, to 55.8% from weeks 9 to 10. So he has really found a way to get rid of the ball more quickly. We saw that against Miami. We saw that Sunday against the Vikings. And if we see Cleveland come after the pressure, he's going to have to continue to do that, because you don't want him feeling like he's risking bodily harm by standing there in the pocket and possibly letting Myles Garrett get too close to him. So I think the Ravens, go ahead early-ish in this game, get enough on special teams, get enough on defense, and maybe they allow a late touchdown to get some hope back there in Cleveland that this might actually come down to the wire. But I think they hold on for a 7-point win.
A lot has been made about Lamar not running as much this season, and
I think fewest design rushes of his career per game basis.
Do you think that's the Ravens Todd Monken being overly cautious about his health, or do you think that that's Lamar not trusting his health, or what do you think that is? Just facing a lot of blitz?
Just I don't know. Probably just wanting to keep him healthy for the postseason. I think back to that quote from what the Washington Post profile of him from before last year, where he said that he just felt like shit going into that game against the Chiefs, and he felt like if he was healthier, he would have been able to run away from the safety who tackled him on that self pass, basically. So that's
a lot of the reason that he lost weight last offseason.
Yeah. And to be fair to Lamar, we did see him. It's not like he's completely avoided design runs. He checked into that kind of QB sweep in the third or fourth quarter against the Vikings, where it was the short yardage situation where he just kind of runs to the left and gets that first down and nearly gets to the end zone. So he has done enough with his legs to kind of keep defenses honest, but obviously it's still not 2019, 2020 Lamar, where you could put him down for 10 to 14 carries every single game.
Yeah, he averaged 54 rushing yards per game last season, down to 36 this year, which would be the lowest of his NFL career. So something to monitor, especially if he is still dealing with that knee soreness. My prediction, Jonas, I've got the Ravens in a blowout, 30-17. Feel good about this one. I think no matter if Rashad Bateman plays, no matter how Lamar Jackson feels, assuming that he is starting, I reserve the right to change my prediction if Lamar Jackson does not play. Then I think that the Ravens should blow out this Browns team, because they have every reason to. We will have complete coverage of that game. You'll be in Cleveland. We will do a podcast after that game. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. At Paul Mancano is mine. At Old Banner Sports as well, to get all of the coverage from Jonas, Gianna Hahn, Childs Walker, Kyle Goon. We will have that episode for you Sunday night. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks so much for tuning in. Oh, I almost forgot to do our little soundbite, because subscribe to the banner, $1 for 6 months.
$1. Shout out to the banner.
Had to get that in there. Thanks so much for tuning in.